never smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys, Miss Liz back in the house, and we had an incredible afternoon this afternoon with Isabel Reddy, and she shared her book. And tonight we have Cevin Soling in the house, and we're going to be serving his tea and a couple of his books. I'm going to pop those up during the live broadcast. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all those platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, all those good platforms. And also check out the podcast apps, because Miss Liz is on those as well. So Spotify, Listen Notes, Podbean, all those good notes, and give those a like, follow, and subscribe, and get these tea times out there, because they do help the guests and they do help somebody who they resonate with, or maybe looking for a book to read or a story to hear. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro, and then we're going to get Cevin in here and we're going to spill his tea. And his tea is subversion, liberation, and relevation. That is the tea we are serving tonight for everybody in the house. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time at Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where stories do not just entertain, they challenge, provoke, and make us think a little deeper about the world we live in. Today's guest is not afraid to break rules, stir minds, and turn expectations upside down. Please join me in welcoming Cevin Soling, award-winning filmmaker, author, musician, academic, and creative force behind the Rumpelville Chronicles, a series of satirical illustrated books that may look like children's stories on the outside, but are absolutely written for grown minds. Cevin's work blends absurdity, dark humor, and moral commentary and social critical in a way that makes people laugh first and then think about why they are laughing. Through twisted tales, rebellious characters, and unconventional plots, he takes satirical jabs at everything from ideology and power to empathy, platitude, and the strange convention society accepts without question. With nearly 20 films to his name, music features on MTV and VH1, 4 graduate degrees from Harvard, and a creative career built on questioning systems and challenging norms. Cevin brings a voice that is fearless, irrelevant, and impossible to ignore. So grab your cup and lean in. Today's tea time is about satire, storytelling, and why sometimes the strangest stories tell the deepest truth. Let me get Cevin in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Cevin.
It's pronounced Kevin, but yeah, thanks.
Oh, Kevin.
Yeah.
Oh, I would have never guessed it. I see with the letters. Well, look at that.
Yeah, no
Cevin
worries there.
Soling.
Yeah, it's a Celtic spelling, and yeah, a lot of people, where I'm living right now, they mispronounce it. They call their basketball team the Boston Celtics, but it actually should be Celtics. So a lot of people aren't familiar with the hard C there, but I appreciate you having me on the show, and I think it's great you've got your own theme song. That's kind of impressive.
Yeah, my son wrote it for me. That's my son that wrote that, and then he had AI kind of put the music into it. So
wow.
That just kind of shows you what my son thinks of me, right?
Nice. Being a successful parent with a child who's willing to write your theme song is a feather in one's cap, I would imagine.
So, Kevin, let's talk about who you were as a little guy and who you are now.
Wow. I think one of the things with the creative pursuits with most people, you'll see, certainly with musicians, is that the person that many people were when they were little is kind of the same person, that they're kind of in an arrested state of development. To a certain degree, that's true for me. I think I've become a little less cynical. I think as a little kid, I was very much more so than I am now, which I think is kind of curious that I would change in that kind of way. But by and large, I am pretty much the same person, and I'm a parent, and I've constantly it affects my the way I raise my kids in both a good and bad way, that I'm able to I have a very keen memory of how I felt. I don't quite have there's a condition, superior autobiographical memory, which I think they've only identified like 8 people who have this, where they can, you tell them a day in the past and they'll tell you the weather and everything that transpired. I don't have that level of memory, but I do have very good memory all the way back to at least 2 years old, and who I was, what I thought about specific things. And I didn't realize that was unique until fairly recently, when I've talked to people, and I'm just very surprised that they don't have that degree of recall. But I mean, I remember assignments in first grade and kindergarten and what I wrote, and so I have a very good memory, again, about how I thought about things and responded to things. And so with my kids, in terms of the things that they need and that they want and their disappointments and things, it's like I rarely say no to a lot of things that I probably should.
So you're that yes parent.
Yeah, no, I'll always, whatever they want. It's like, I remember, how I felt when I was their age about expectations and things, and how important certain things are. And so, yeah, so I'm very, I'm fairly indulgent that way, that I probably shouldn't be. But I've noticed that my sense of humor hasn't changed a great deal either, and that's another issue or problem, in terms of some of the my writings, like the Rumpelville Chronicles, for instance, are certainly I think the writing is more sophisticated, but I think the impulses and the things that I'm responding to haven't changed a great deal from the things that troubled me when I was little.
I always love what that question opens, what doors open, because a lot of people are like, I wasn't expecting that question of me as a little kid and a big kid, but it gives the listeners and myself an open door to getting to know you a little bit on the personal side. on why you write the way you write and how you bring the stories and the music and all that, because you do a lot of stuff, like you do movies and films and that. So what age were you when you got into all of that, Kevin?
So I mean, it kind of depends. So when I was little, I would do I think art was a great way to. It was the only realm where you were permitted a certain degree of freedom. In the adult world, and and this is sort of what I've maintained, is sort of the sense of self versus the world of adults, and so I mean I certainly had a certain appreciation for music, and I didn't realize that my connection to music was different from others until I think around 9 or so, that that there was a lot of, like the rest of the people in my family, my parents, my sisters, they all they all liked music and had it, but for me it was something much much stronger, much more profound, my connection there. But with art, as far as what one can say and do in art, that was accepted. They didn't really, I mean, they censored my art to a certain degree if I pushed the window too far. But most of the many of the teachers and adult figures that worked with kids when I was little were sort of a next generation with the sort of hippie movement, or that sort of ideology, and they'd use some sort of the language. And one of the things, you're dealing with a whole bunch of hyperactive kids, and so they would always tell us, mellow out, and always trying to tell us be mellow, be mellow. So the first cartoon that I drew was the superhero adventures of Mellow Man, who sort of, if this was kind of what they were trying to induce, that we should all be mellow, then this one character who was the essence, the apotheosis of mellow, would be this superhero figure. And so he would be in various situations. The woman would be tied to the train tracks, and they'd call for Mellow Man, and of course, because he was so mellow, he would arrive on the scene way too late. He wouldn't, because he was, and that was so with the typical disastrous results that would ensue as a result of someone not showing up in time because to save the day. And so he was. And that sort of thing is was sort of my way of thumbing my nose at them trying to demanding something from us, and me showing the consequences of what they wanted. And I think that sort of sense hasn't changed much.
Well, I think a superhero Mellow Man is pretty cool. I think that's a nice name.
Yeah. It sounds it, but like I said, if you really in the cartoons, they didn't have the best of outcomes.
Well, I'm going to pull up your books, and then we're going to talk about these books, because I got 4 of them out of 6, I believe. I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I found 7 of these books from the Rumpelville Chronicles. So let's talk about these 4 that are up on the screen.
Should be 9.
There should be 9. I found 7 on the website.
Okay. Oh, huh. Yeah. So, the concept there was using, again, I think it sort of perfectly ties into your introductory question about the mind of a child. And so the books all have the illustrations and the sense like, oh, these are kid books, but there are a few that are okay for kids to read, but they deal with more serious issues, and they're the appearance, the distance between the appearance of these sort of friendly kid books and sort of the heavier subject is kind of, that tension there is sort of a lot of where the humor comes in, but they're still so they're meant to be funny, but they, at the same time, they introduce issues that relate to general human foibles, are all of our shortcomings, and the ways that we're petty in some ways, and the things that we can't quite let go of, and the things that kind of keep us from that make sure that we're neurotic and unhappy when when we could and should be otherwise.
So, Kevin, what inspired you to create the Rumpelville Chronicles, and why package them like children's books for adults' minds?
So yeah, it's a great question. For me, I love the artwork. There was this one artist, James Flora, who's a children's book writer, and he did my favorite book growing up was Sherwood Walks Home, because the artwork is just so gorgeous. It's sort of, they're kind of meant to be like postmodern Aesop fables, where there is a sort of, there is a message sort of buried there, but it's not direct, and it's they're relatively short and easy to read, and it's sort of the distance between some part of it is it's unconventional. It's just an approach that just isn't done, having those sort of sophisticated themes in this kind of presentation. But they're plot driven. They're easy to read. The artwork, like I said, is gorgeous. I didn't do any of the artwork. I had ideas and concepts for the art, but I worked with talented artists, so I can say all sorts of wonderful things about the artwork without coming across as as egotistical. But it's they're meant to be funny. Part of it is the humor, but part of it is also that the distance between what one was told when one was little and the way the world actually is in some ways. But even the way the world actually isn't presented in a way that's definitive. Everything is ambiguous. There isn't anything that's sort of conclusive, other than that all people are are fallible creatures.
Well, Kevin, your stories are absurd, funny, and often violent. What is it about absurdity that helps people see truth more clearly?
I think only one of the stories is violent, and it was meant to be a commentary on violence. So I made it sort of over the top, because I don't like horror movies. I'm very disturbed by violence. I find violence very, very troubling. But I wanted to, and I wanted to kind of draw attention to that. The absurdity is, I think it's only the plots are absurd, but the characters within them are not. And I think it's more how do people, and people are absurd in the ways, just are naturally absurd. So it's kind of how would a person respond to an absurd situation, and that sort of, I think, is a way that gets into the essence of humanity. We know how we respond to things that are everyday, and if you're confronted by a situation that you have nothing to rely on in terms of past experiences, how you respond there is very revealing. And so it's a window into the essence of of our souls in that sort of way. But with a good dose of humor, because of the absurdity, and the humor kind of makes everything palatable, especially if the subject matter can be edgy in that sort of way.
Well, Kevin, the world is so crazy, right? It's absurd, right? And is that how you get to talk about these hard topics that everybody kind of just avoids, because they're looking for so much common sense, but there is no common sense because it's just so crazy out there? Is this how you tell your stories?
I think that there's something to that, I suppose, but I don't think, I think it's more character driven, and in terms of than directly related to. I mean, I guess there is some tie to certain things in the world that are consistent, but it's not. It doesn't. It's not bogged down by like contemporary politics or anything of that nature. It goes beyond that, I think. But yeah, it's um, but yeah, I mean, there's an effort to normalize the absurd. I think is kind of what takes place, in terms of, you're confronted with the situation. But often there is a definite target in many of them. I think. Yeah, I mean, I guess we try to, there's, one of my favorite ones that is, the last of the series so far, was Tiffany Brittany Brooke.
Oh, that's the last one?
Yeah, yeah, that's the ninth one in the series. We'll see what number 10 is, but yeah, the last one that I wrote was that one, which later got made into an animated movie that has actually got, it's been in film festivals and done quite well there, winning some awards and such. But it's yeah, it's a story, and I was kind of surprised because the last one I was, film fest I was at was a Hollywood one where the audience was mostly Hollywood people, and they were enjoying the movie until they realized, about 3/4 of the way into it, that they were the butt of the joke.
Then you're like, you know what? No.
There's this one moment where the main character goes into this, this soliloquy where she, where everyone in the audience was laughing up into that point, it's a very funny scene if you're not, the target of the joke. But it's the story of this young woman who leaves home so that she can go to Hollywood to pursue her dream of becoming a prostitute, but she ends up getting sucked into the sleazy world of acting, and it's her whole, personal descent into becoming an actress. And her folks all think that she's, prostituting herself, and she's lying to them and telling them that, they're not realizing that she's actually, she ends up becoming so successful that, as an actress, that they realize that she's been lying to them, and they go to retrieve her and pick her up, and she's all ashamed that she's become an actress. And so it sort of flips that whole story on its head, but it does so in a way that fit a little too cleanly in terms of what of the the way, what it takes to be an actress or actor, and that world. So that was, but that one came out a little too well. I was very, very surprised and pleased at how that one worked out. But there's another one that's much more softer that I actually read to my kids, and that's The Bomb That Followed Me Home. And that one starts out, it's like the story of, you think it's like, the dog that follows, the child home from school, and then the child, pleads to their parents, oh, can we keep it? Except instead of a dog, in this case, it's a bomb. And the mother's like, I'm not going to stand guard. Who's going to stand guard over it every night? Who's going to polish its fuse? Or not polish, change its fuse? Who's going to polish it? So there's the sort of struggle there, and resulting in them trying to figure out what to do with the bomb. Is there some crazed anarchist who's out looking, missing his bomb, putting up the signs, the lost signs and stuff. But that one was very conscious. There was a writer in the 1940s, 50s, James Thurber, who wrote these brilliant short stories, and that were, usually involved gaslighting in some kind of way. But and a lot of stuff in the New Yorker, he would have pieces there. It's very respected in books and things. But that one I was definitely channeling James Thurber in that one. And the artwork there was the one that I deliberately was also inspired by James Flora, because it just had this beautiful artwork from my childhood. So I consider it to be semi-autobiographical that way, even though there was no dog or bomb that ever followed me home. But the rest of the piece of the story, sort of hold. So all the artwork in all the books generally is I try to get very creative in this, and each book the artwork differs in very distinct ways, but at the same time it still feels very unified. You can have radically different art that still is cohesive. Um, but yeah, that's the situation. You have normalizing the absurd of trying to, the kid who's like, oh, can we keep the bomb?
So, Kevin, I'm going to pull up your books again. Could you tell us what order they are? Because so you're telling me Tiffany is the last book, so she's book 9. So what's the Jolly Elf?
The Jolly Elf was the first one that came out.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't the first one written. The first one written was actually Wembley. It was the first one I wrote. So I don't always have control over, the order of things. But Wembley was the first one that I wrote, but Jolly Elf was the first one that actually came out. And so Jolly Elf is one that seems like it's going to be sort of a nice little kid's story. That it's, you have this Jolly Elf who loves to sing, but in this, in this small sort of, rustic town. And but the problem is that he loves to sing at 4 a.m. and keeps all the townsfolk up all night, and they can't do anything about him because he's got some magical power, and he's evil, and likes to collect shrunken human heads, and so they have to somehow figure out what they're going to do about the elf. And,
so kind of like Beetlejuice, right, where the head shrinks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a bunch of travel. Actually, there was when I one of the very first places I went to after I graduated college was I went to Borneo, and I spent some time with the Iban tribe. There were 2 tribes. This is kind of off the subject, but I guess we'll go there. There are 2 tribes in Borneo.
That's okay. When we spill tea, we have fun. We go down some rabbit holes here.
This is a deep rabbit hole. So there are 2 tribes in Borneo, the Iban and the Dayak, that were headhunters. And the Dayak were the seafaring headhunters, and the Iban were the ones that lived in the jungles. And I spent some time with the Iban tribe in the jungles. And they had a collection of human heads that they had shrunken, and I got to learn the process of how they shrunk human heads there. I was never in jeopardy. The heads that they collected were from warfare from other tribes, because they all live in a longhouse, and they're rice farmers, and when they need additional land, they run into conflict with other tribes, and so the heads were collected to warn, to sort of be intimidating, and they'd hang the heads from the opposing tribes in bags around their longhouse. Why they shrink them, I never really quite got the answer. It could just be so they take up less space. They
just shrink the brain.
Yeah. They boil them in some giant cauldron with I don't know what leaves and stuff are in the cauldron, but it enables the skin around the skull to loosen, and they use some bone to get the skull out. And so the shrinking is really just because the skin doesn't have the skull in there. Is why, if in case anyone at home wants to engage in head shrinking, there's the process. There's you didn't. I guess there's probably I could teach a class in it. There's
well, we have a comment that came into.
You tie around the neck some vine and hang them. Yeah, they gave me, actually, it was funny, when I left the tribe, they actually gave me a bunch of heads. And because I guess they had more than they need. It was an honor, I guess, to get them. And I all I had was a backpack, and I had just a limited number of clothes, and and they're kind of they flaked and what have you, and I barely had room, and I didn't know the process of I don't think you're allowed to take them through customs.
How would you explain that? Tell them you're writing a book. That's what you do.
I left the skulls in the room, but I try kind of in a hidden thing so I wouldn't be insulting. But that would be the strangest gift I think I've ever received. Would be a collection of human skulls. I did get to play a drinking game with them, which was kind of cool. They taught me drinking game that I played with headhunters, where you all sit in again, this is going, I don't know, but we all sat in a circle, and there was a vine that had a wooden ring that the vine went through, and everyone would sit in the perimeter holding the vine, and there'd be a person drumming, and someone in the center would have to, when the music, the drumming stopped, the person in the center had to point to who they thought had the ring, because you're passing it either to the left or to the right, and everyone's moving their hands, and you're trying to hide the ring. And if they guess right, then the person they picked has to drink. They had this fermented, they're rice farmers. They had this fermented rice, which is kind of like sake. They called it tuak. And you drink, and then you go in the center and pick. And if you're wrong, then you got to drink and stay in the center. And I imagine if you're wrong a lot, you'd get into a lot of trouble, because you'd have to keep drinking quite a bit, and it would probably get harder and harder to figure out who has the ring. But
so
anyway,
have you ever brought that into any of your books?
Well, I just did with this one, with the Jolly Elf having
with the Jolly Elf
collecting just because the Jolly Elf collected the shrunken head. So that was, there is a tie in there, but beyond that, I don't think I've really found a place or really thought to interject much more of that there. And they were tremendously nice people. So I don't. So there's nothing too much really to make fun of there beyond, the absurdity of being in a situation where one is handed a collection of shrunken heads and has to try to figure out what to do with them.
Well, I didn't think I would come to the table tonight and talk about shrunken heads, but you know what? That's what I love about my guests. My guests always open up new doors and avenues and rabbit holes, and that's what's fun about Tea Time. Kevin, I want to get back to your book, because we have some questions that are coming in and some comments that are coming in the studio. And we had one that I popped up, and it says, wow, this is a powerful conversation. What inspired this topic? I don't know what inspired this topic, Kevin.
Well, I'm not sure quite which topic, but if we're talking about the shrunken heads, then it had to do with just that the Jolly Elf, it starts out like he's, like a typical children's book, that it's a story of a Jolly Elf, but the Jolly Elf is actually criminally insane. And so then the townsfolk have this problem of how to get rid of this magical Jolly Elf that's, keeping everyone up all night. And so so the mayor reaches out and tries to find some knights who can vanquish the Jolly Elf, but the mayor, then negotiates the cable TV rights, and all of the advanced publicity and programming ends up alerting the Jolly Elf of this pending battle, which is sort of a mistake, and it goes down that path then. So it's but yeah, that was, I think, where the heads come in. I'm sure in the other stories there are references. In the bomb that followed me home, for instance, I guess the poster where the mother is imagining that some crazed anarchist is probably worried sick, wondering where his bomb is. The image of the anarchist was actually this picture of this friend of mine. Mine and the illustrator who was sort of not that he was an anarchist, but he just had the perfect look and appearance. For that. So, there's definitely these subtle interjections of, from my past that makes its way, into the different stories in various ways. So there's that.
So, Kevin, we have a question here. The Rumpelville Chronicles sounds fascinating. Where can I start? So what's the first book?
Oh gosh, which one to start with? I'd probably start with The Bomb That Followed Me Home. I think that's a good start. I know a lot of people like the Jolly Elf. There's The Land of Plenty has probably my favorite artwork. Eldwin, I think, was probably the first one that leaked out. There's another one, Boris the Dog, which is the one which was the criticism of violence. Actually, is probably got the most attention because it was. It got picked up. It was this close to being the replacement for Beavis and Butthead way back in the day when that first went off the air. MTV was on a roll with animation, or thought they were going to, because Beavis and Butthead was so successful. So they picked Boris the dog to be the follow-up, and it did end up airing on MTV, but it didn't become the whole series that it was supposed to, because they decided to go in the direction of reality television and kind of phased out their animation department. So that was kind of unfortunate, because it would have been the gotten out there right before South Park, and it was similar-ish in its irreverence to South Park. But it's a funny story, but it's very disturbing. So you need a good you need to really take a step back from that.
You got to play the drinking game first to understand the story.
Yeah, but it did air. It did air on MTV. There was this great animator, Bill Plimpton, who you might have heard of. He was actually the one responsible for bringing it to MTV. It showed at Sundance Film Festival, and with the shorts there, and Bill Plimpton just adored it and brought it to them, and so big shout out and thanks to him for that. But so that one got some recognition.
So Kevin, how many of the Rumpelville Chronicles have been made into animated cartoons or movies? Or
let me see, Tiffany, Boris, and it might just be those two. I'm trying to think if there was a third. I feel like there was a third, but I know Tiffany, Brittany, Brooke, and Boris were made into animation, but I keep thinking there was a third one.
So how did that feel to see your books turn into animation?
It's amazing seeing it, things like that come to life. It's just a different medium. You gain something, you lose something too. There's you kind of fixate on the things while you appreciate some parts to it, you kind of fixate a lot on what's lost too. There's something in a book that just can't be translated to film. And that's the downside. So it's mixed. It goes both ways.
So Kevin, what do you think is missing from today's children's literature or even adult storytelling?
Wow, it's missing. There's this guy Mo Willems. He's wonderful. My goodness. I wish he was. He had been writing when I was little. His works are really great. And there are a few others. I mean, I have three little girls, and so I've read hundreds of kids' books, and some are much better than others. The ones that aren't as good typically really try too hard to have a message, and those are unfortunately the ones because there's a message, they're celebrated by the whoever is reviewing and reading and stuff, because they just find it's important. But you can have a message without having an explicit message. So if the message is explicit, it's not. It's a failure. So I'd say that's sort of the biggest problem with when it comes to children's literature. But you just need really good characters, and Mo Willems in particular has his characters just with very little effort they just really shine. I have a long list of books that I don't care much for, but it's more fun to talk about the ones I like. Adult literature, there's a lot of really great writers out there right now, and I think it's easy to sort of lose sight of that, because a lot of the bigger names, from the early from the early 20th century, where you really hear the greats, F. Scott Fitzgerald and William Faulkner and people like that, where they just have a real presence. I think maybe there's just more. There just might be more writers today, and fewer, and not that there are fewer readers, but there are, in a way, that there's competing mediums. I think one of the things with the early 20th century is, even, television was at its infancy. Radio was there, but it wasn't competing with books. It was such a dominant. It was the dominant form of the dominant medium, and so I don't really think that we've lost great writers. I think there are a lot of great writers out there, but they have different things to compete with. It's kind of like in music. There's a sense, could there ever be another Beatles? And the Beatles were around, not just, that they were the best at what they did, which is a fact. They also, you had 3 network TV stations. You had this, the media that the youth were consuming was the same as the adults. There wasn't any distinction. If your 7-year-old was watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and that child's great grandfather was watching the Ed Sullivan Show, so they had the attention of the entire world, that you can't have today. And it doesn't look like that's going to change. The only medium today that break, and it's even worse. It's not even just that you have all the different YouTube, and you have all the different thousands of different satellite channels and everything. You have it broken down by ideology as well. What's your political bias? Well, you're going to watch this, and you're that age, and then there's so it's everything is disparate and separate, and with the lone exception, this is sort of the depressing thing, of advertising. Everyone knows Coca-Cola, everyone knows McDonald's, and
that's what the whole point of Tea Time is, right, Kevin? Is getting the people that are in the background that are doing amazing work. Like you said, there's amazing writers out there that are not being seen or heard or read about because there's so much in the pool, right? That people are not getting seen and heard. And that's why I opened this floor for Tea Time, is to get these people that are in the pool that nobody is seeing, right? I'm going fishing, and I'm finding you guys, and I'm bringing you out, and I'm saying, here, check this fish out.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's precisely correct. And it's it's creators are reliant on people like you to curate and to say, hey, this might be worth checking out, and let's draw attention to that. And that's also part of what we have now. It's not just that that you've all this competing media. You don't have gatekeepers anymore. You have so much open forum, and open forum is great in the sense that everyone who has a voice can get out there, but without the curation, it just becomes a sea of white noise. You don't have, you need forums like Tea Time. You need, people to say, hey, let's check this out. This might be of interest to some people, and that's remarkable and amazing, and just absolutely necessary.
Well, and you just never know what you're going to talk about, like shrinking heads and the drinking game. You just never know what comes to Tea Time. You think you're coming for a book, but you're coming for an adventure. You're coming for an experience. And that's what we're having tonight together. Kevin, you gave me some really incredible words for your tea, and I want to get into your tea because time is flying by really fast. But the tea that you gave me was subversion, liberation, and relevation. Why those 3 words for your tea?
Well, so subversion relates certainly to it's defying expectations is one thing. It's going against the grain. It's it's the putting together of disparate things. It's presenting something that looks like a children's book and subverting the content and all the and expectations, as well as being subversive as far as challenging prevailing wisdom and ideas and the status quo in many ways. It's attacking those things. well, I'm sorry, what was the second word?
Liberation.
Liberation. So liberation, yeah, it's you know, that's about freedom, and it's I think there's I guess that's sort of the prevailing sentiment of the series, and certainly the things that one can do is just being open, and the capacity that you know, you know, without patting myself on the back too much, I think the works really are about the freedom of imagination, that you can go anywhere and do anything, and they really try to go in that direction. Kierkegaard's dilemma, what inspired that one, for instance, was, you know, this being told that every story that you tell, this was, you know, going back to, you know, some English class or something, you know, must have a protagonist. And it's like, well, does it? Must it? And so I tried to create a story where there is no protagonist, and so each character subsequently, well, is okay. That one, it's not violent, but each character does, you know, die in some kind of ways that the next character in the series can take over. But it was about trying to avoid having and it's that sort of freedom, that liberation from what you need to do or should do. In one of the other books, Land of Plenty, there's, you know, the characters there. Ones are this group that's sort of inspired by, you know, the ancient Aztec, and their neighbors with this other group that look like the stereotypical 1950s con men, and it's sort of like, just, you don't see those two together. The artwork in that is actually some of my favorite, because it's, you know, just the way they look, because it's so incongruent. But art in general, and this I'm stealing from a philosopher, from Sartre. He says, yeah, that it's about expanding the landscape of possibilities. It's about, you know, freedom. It's about, you know, everything that's successful is breaking down barriers in terms of oh, I hadn't thought that I could express myself that way. I didn't think that I could pursue that thing. You know, you just don't really think that you can go there. And this is about introduce, or, you know, I like to think I'm contributing or inspiring people to, you know, to be free in that regard, and that there shouldn't be boundaries on the imagination. Well, I guess there can be and should be, because I guess there are certainly inappropriate places to go, but you can censor yourself after the fact. You know, you know, some things aren't a good idea, but at least you open yourself to different ideas, and then you can then censor after the fact if something's just inappropriate. But you need the freedom to do that, because you can also come up with something good. And then revelation is the outcome, is the consequence. It's that moment, that aha moment that you get, where, like, you know, you can be liberated and have millions of ideas and thoughts, and then you find something, a gem, you know, that's like, and it's, you know, you develop it, and you can see all that can come from it, all that can come out of it, that holds meaning. And not just for you, but it can hold, you know, a broader meaning that people can take from and be inspired by, even if it's satirical, and it has, you know, you know, you can appreciate what's being mocked, and realize within yourself, you know, like, oh, I get that, and I see that, and be amused, and turn it sort of both inward and outward at the same time.
Well, it kind of goes with one of the questions that came in. I'm just going to pop it up here. Where did I see it? Goes to here. How can parents encourage independent thinking in children? Because I hear a lot of independent thinking and being the rebel and going against the grain and all of that. So how do we teach our children to be independent thinkers?
I just, you know, with my kids, I love their, you know, the questions. And when they ask a question, it's not that they're, you know, there aren't stupid questions. There are, you know, you can talk to your IRS. Isn't it time you audited me? You know, that would be a stupid question. So there are, you know, stupid questions, but there are brilliant questions, and a lot of times, you know, the asking of the question is more important than the answer, only because, you know, there's a lot of things that we just don't have the answers to. But it's being able to identify the right questions. And so I always praise and reward as best as I can, just, you know, through praise, you know, if the kids ask a question. And so it's about encouraging a kind of fearlessness. I think I was, you know, might have been afraid that I would ask something silly or stupid and be mocked at or laughed at when I was little in certain situations. I think to foster that is to, you know, to sort of make a space where they feel like, wow, I you know, it wasn't that I said something, you know, profound. I asked a question that was profound. And yeah, and since, you know, kids are always, you know, hardwired to ask questions, as they should be, it's just, you know, that's just part of the nature, you know, to really just reward that in and of itself. The asking of the question, I think is a great way to at least start, and then you can work with them. It's like, well, you know, what do you think? And I think it's also being open to listening to, you know, to their ideas, and then not being critical in terms of what their response is. Yeah, if they have something inventive, and then if they want to turn it back, and because they want the real answer, you can, you know, throw something out and then go, but, you know, I kind of like your answer better. You know?
Can I use that in my next book? Cevin, are any of your children interested in writing or filmmaking or music?
They are. So I have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 9-year-old. The 9-year-old is already a better artist than I was now. You know, she's so she loves drawing. She's great at drawing. The 6-year-old, I can tell, is already showing signs that she's going to be, you know, every bit as good as you know, as her older sister. The 4-year-old's just sort of developing, but my 6-year-old shares my love for the Beatles, which is great.
So you have one for drawing, one with music, and the 4-year-old's going to be the filmmaker.
Well, she loves dance, so we'll see.
She likes to dance. Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, I don't encourage anyone to follow in my footsteps. They
don't be a rebel like your dad.
Yeah, they forge their own paths and whatever their interests are. But yeah, and yeah, drawing is one medium that I mean, I was able to do, you know, rudimentary things and you know, in cartoon world, and succeeded in getting things across sufficiently that would upset and disturb my teachers and you know, those people. But you know, but it's something that I'm not, you know, don't have quite, you know, the skills. So it's wonderful seeing, you know, them, you know, develop those skills that I didn't have. I appreciate that much more than, you know, than if they go down, you know, the same path as me. But she started doing some acting too, so we'll see how that goes. She's already been in, you know, in an extra in a film. So
well, there you go. See, you're setting an example for the children. You're being a role model. So they're looking at their daddy, and they're each one's going into a different branch.
There was one. There was a film that I did on the education system called The War on Kids, and there was one student who ended up sort of featured in that film. You know, I followed him around for a couple of days, and I think he might have. He was, you know, phenomenally charismatic. I mean, the kid's got, you know, or he was not a kid anymore, but he just insane amounts of charisma and insight. But the conventional structures just weren't designed for someone like him. And happily, he ended up, I think, because of me, or I think he said so as much, you know, he ended up going into film and has, you know, become, you know, it really, you know, found his niche there. Just phenomenally talented, and just really worked out well for him. So I did have a positive influence on on someone in that specific regard. As far as I don't want to say he followed in my footsteps beyond that, he decided, that I opened the world up to film to him, and he, really embraced, learning all the skills of filmmaking.
So, Kevin, do you have any new books that are going to be coming out, or any films, or anything that you'd like to mention?
I do in all domains. The book that I have coming out next is a philosophy book, so it's a completely different direction. It's a book on solipsism. It's if you're interested in philosophy, and then that might be of interest to you. But I actually have a few different publishers who have reached out, and 3 different ones. So I have to make a decision on which one there. But and then I've got a few different. I've got 2 different film projects that'll be coming out this year that I'm excited about. One is on it's a documentary, but in a different direction, that deals with the summer of 1966, and it lays the Beatles' tour of America over everything that was going on at that time, using archival footage. And it's a pretty dark time that people don't realize. So 1967 summer, people know as the summer of love. This, you had the birth of the celebrity serial killers, where the shooter in University of Texas, and the one who killed 8 nurses in Chicago. The first time you had this, celebrity, but you also had all the riots, and the James Meredith was shot during his march against fear. Just this whole landscape of violence that was going on, and then this backlash against the Beatles over their allegedly John Lennon's statement about the Beatles being more popular than Jesus, was a statement that that he had made, and it was interpreted as being anti-Christian, when in fact it was an observation about the decline of interest in religion at that time. But it was used basically as a cudgel over the Beatles' undermining of culture. There was huge cultural transformations that the Beatles set forth, and that was a little too much for a lot of people. And so it's called The Summer of Hate. Before The Summer of Love, there was The Summer of Hate. And then there's another movie that's coming out also that it's still in the works, but it's about halfway done, where I'm getting all these famous celebrities in any type of field to just give me audio explaining how, if they could control the conditions of their death, how they'd like to die, and then I animate their death. And it's been some of them have been very amusing and funny. Some have been very poignant and powerful, and serious and interesting. So it's really run a wide range, which is perfect, which is great, because you don't want it all to be one or the other. But it's been nice, and the animation styles I've been using to create it have all varied in regard to whichever celebrity it is. For instance, like I have Fred Schneider, who's the lead singer of the B-52s, so his piece is animated in a very new way of style. And Paul McCartney's stepmother, Angie McCartney, is one of the people who kindly participated, and I did hers animation in a Yellow Submarine style. And so it's going to be a fun, interesting piece.
I think it's going to be interesting to find out how they want to die, because it's amazing how some people want to die or leave this world, right?
Yeah. I thought everyone was just going to say, "Oh, I want to die in my sleep." No one wants to die in their sleep.
Some of them got really creative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But,
so Kevin, if anybody wanted to reach out and get you onto their podcast or know about your books, where could they reach you?
Well, you can go to, so all my work, my film, my books, my, whatever else, music, is all at kevinsoling.com. And if you misspell Kevin with a K, it'll still get there, to kevinsoling.com. And there's a contact form on that website where requests can come in if people are interested. But there should also be links to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever, as far as if people are interested in the books, where you can order them, or go to your bookstore and tell Baker and Taylor to send them to the bookstore if they aren't already there. Hopefully they are, but if they're not, they'll be able to order them because it's being through the normal book distributors.
And Kevin, what's your final message for all the listeners tonight?
Wow, final message. I guess follow Teatime. It's a great program, and it's very welcome and needed to have someone shine light on all sorts of interesting people and creative people and people who are trying to do positive, put out positive energy and do good things in this world, and how appreciated it is that there's a format to promote that.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated this conversation and getting to know a little bit about shrinking heads and some drinking games and all that good stuff, and a good strong cup of tea. That's the way we serve it in this house. We don't serve the beverage. We serve storytelling and words. And again, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up. Thank you to our audience for bringing in your questions and comments. I truly appreciate that as well. I could not do this without you guys. But tonight, what a wild and thought-provoking and unforgettable conversation. Kevin, thank you for reminding us that satire is not just about humor, it is about exposure. It shines a light of absurdity, hypocrisy, and the things society would rather leave unquestioned. Your work proves that stories do not have to play nice to be meaningful. Tonight, we were reminded that sometimes the most outrageous tales are the ones that tell the truth most clearly. Through dark humor, twisted imagination, and fearless creativity, you challenge people to step outside the expected and look at the world with fresh eyes. You show us that art has the power to disrupt comfort, provoke reflection, and wake people up from the autopilot. Here is something to carry with you after this tea time. What beliefs, systems, or normal ideals have you accepted without ever stopping to question them? Because sometimes growth does not begin in comfort. Sometimes it begins in discomfort and a very strange story. Until our next cup, share, keep thinking deeper, keep questioning louder, and keep making room for conversations that shake the ordinary. And I'll see everybody next week on Thursday with 2 new tea times, and we'll do this all over again.